What's up, LA?
What's up, LA? Welcome to the May episode of What's Up, LA?
Your guide to everything that's happening in the LA arts community.
So, Nina,
Yeah.
you wrapped Athena Fest just recently. How are you doing? How are you feeling?
The first ever Athena Fest was a hit, but I am tired, Brian. I'm very proud, but it was a lot of work.
But it was super successful. Hopefully you all made it, and hopefully this is the first of many.
Amen. Thoughts and prayers to that. I do feel proud and happy and excited. Like, there's a lot going on up here. So that's why I'm excited that this episode is about what it's about.
Well, let's talk about that because it is May, and May is Mental Health Awareness Month. And so it's very important for all of us to do check-ins with each other, check-ins with ourselves. And this month we've got a really exciting interview with Keili Grief Center and their Catharsis program that they do right here at the Blue Door each month.
We also have a great community calendar. It's very special. I worked really hard on this one after being very tired, so I really need you to enjoy it. Thank you so much.
I'm sure we will. And this month is also Asian American and Pacific Islander Heritage Month. And so we have a wonderful interview for you coming from Little Tokyo here in Los Angeles.
So, nothing else to say, but enjoy this month's episode of What's Up, LA.
What's up, LA? What's up, LA? What's up, LA? What's up, LA?
What's up, everybody? We're so excited to have you. I'm here with Brian and Gabe from Catharsis Theater. As this month is Mental Health Awareness Month, we wanted to bring these guys in. We've been doing these Catharsis Theater programs here for a while now. But I'd love to find out more about you guys, more about the program, and psychodrama in general. So, Brian, why don't we start with you? Tell us a little bit about who you are and how we got here.
Fantastic. Well, it's really good to be here. Thanks so much. And we've been doing this Catharsis Theater here with Arts Up LA at Blue Door Theater since 2023. We've done 50 of these Catharsis Theaters. A little bit later on, we're going to do our 51st later today. So thanks so much for making it possible. It really is special. So how I ended up here, and my route is, well, it's not a straight line. I know there's no such thing as a straight line in life. Some people are surprised to hear that I used to be an intelligence officer, used to be a spy. And so
you worked for the FBI.
So I worked for the Department of Defense, and I worked for the FBI and the LAPD here in Los Angeles. So it's been an interesting route. I've always been interested in people, and not just studying people for the sake of it, but I've always been interested in what happens to people when they're at extreme points of their life, when their ordinary life falls away and they're sort of left with what remains. And so some people are surprised to hear that I'm a social worker who used to be an intelligence officer. But for me, the path makes sense. I've had some ups and downs, some tragedy, as I know a lot of us have. And just very briefly, I had a loss in my family and lost somebody that I really care about deeply to suicide. And so I'm really appreciative that you're taking the time for Mental Health Awareness Month to raise light on this important topic. So I spent time at the D.D. Hurst Suicide Prevention Center. I'm part of the Mayor's Office Crisis Response Team. Anytime there's a loss of life in Los Angeles, we go out and we sit with the people that are impacted. I went to graduate school, and then through different ways, and I'm glad to talk a little bit more about psychodrama and the history later on, decided to take the best of theater, the best of therapy, put it together, and we found that this space where people can not just describe their problems and talk about it, but show it, it turns out people always feel better. They always feel relief when they've been able to show what their life is like, not just try to describe it, because describing our life only gets us so far.
Yeah, like, not to get ahead of ourselves, but like most people think about grief counseling and therapy as kind of a one-on-one session with a counselor or a psychologist or a psychiatrist, and this is a totally different style, which we'll talk about that in a little bit here. But Yeah, okay.
Totally different.
Great. And Gabe, tell us a little bit about you and how you got involved.
I'm
with
glad you started
Catharsis
with
Theater.
Brian
Yeah,
and
right?
his lengthy resume of killing people for the U.S. military and then saving people's lives
It
afterwards
balances.
as kind of like a karmic
That's right. We have to,
retribution.
we have to
read
balance itself. It all
the
out.
story of the life of Milarepa, the Tibetan monk, had a very similar path. So I've known Brian since I was in high school. I have been in therapy since I was in high school and before high school. Mental health is very important to me. I have OCD, I have anxiety, I have depression, I have things in my life that I've come to think create a veil between me and life because most of my life is happening in my head and I want more of it to happen in the world. I think that there's some through line with the experiential psychodrama because I think it's great talking about. I think anytime you can express what shouldn't be unexpressed or isn't allowed to be expressed or you don't give yourself permission to feel anytime you express any of that, I think it's cathartic and healing because we are light and dark and happy and sad and generous and petty or at least maybe I'm describing myself. So I was in restaurants for 20 years and I'm an actor and I left the restaurant 9 months ago. And if you believe in synchronicity, which I do, right around that time, Brian was like, hey, do you want to do this thing? Which is kind of like something I'm interested in. And had I had a job, I would have said no, Brian. You're not paying me. There's no money. There's no career trajectory. And I would have said no. But as it happened, I had the time and I said yes. And it's been one of the most rewarding things. And every time we do it, it's like it's interesting to have something that's the same structure, pretty much same structure every time, and is completely different. Not just the way it plays out, but tonally, energetically, mood-wise, emotionally. There's always some are more grief-centered, some are happy, some are about throwing off old masks and embracing, who they are in the present. And so, for me, this experience, Brian's is very intentional. Mine is really more saying yes to things and pulling at strings and seeing where they go.
That's very much our philosophy here at What's Up LA. We have a really tough time saying no to anything, so we pretty much say yes to everything, and that's partially why you guys are here. And so, two very different paths came to the same place. So let's talk about psychodrama a little bit. I know that you've kind of been embedded in this for a number of years now, and you've communicated to me many times in the past kind of the history of it, and I would love to hear a little bit more about that.
Yeah, no, I'm glad to, and also I'm really glad that we're connected and we're doing this together. There's been some amazing moments downstairs here at the Blue Door Theater, and by way of history, maybe I can share something that I'm just inspired now with what Gabe's talking about. There are moments on the stage, and I don't think I need to tell you, there's moments on the stage that are so true, even though they're not real, that people in the audience can't help but feel connected. It happens when we're watching movies and TV, but there's something about theater in particular because we're all here together. There was a moment downstairs a few years ago, and then I'll get to the history, but this is just on my mind, so I want to share it right now. There was a teacher, she lost her job. And I won't get into too many details because what happens in our Catharsis Theater is private for the people that are part of it. But I'll just share, she was a teacher and she lost her job. And she loved being a teacher. And she never got an opportunity to say goodbye to her students. She never had an opportunity to go back in and have any kind of closure, which a lot of us don't get. Whether it's grief of a loved one, like with me, or that I mentioned earlier, or the loss of an identity, the loss of a home. And so what she did is she chose some people from the audience through our facilitation and our gentle direction with psychodrama, and she got to create her classroom on the stage. She got to bring her students that were the parts being played by people in the audience. They got to come up and they got to hold the sort of energy, if you will. They got to play the parts of the students. Other people from the audience got to play objects in the classroom, the clock, the whiteboard. And through these moments, she got to say goodbye to the students that she never got to say goodbye to. And it was unbelievably cathartic, just like Gabe was saying. There was real emotion. There was sadness, there was joy, there was love. And the people in the audience, some of whom got to actually play parts on the stage, and others who were just sitting in the audience, everyone was touched, and everybody, that truth sort of reverberated in everyone's hearts. And I'm speaking in sort of a flowery terms. But let me just go back to the 5th century BC, where this
that's
was
good for sharing that, because then people get an idea
Yeah.
of what to expect and really kind of what the process is like.
Yeah.
So thanks for sharing.
No, you're very welcome, and I feel honored to have been a part of that. And so, going back many, many years to the 5th century BC in Athens, the same type of things were happening. There was this huge mountainside, the Acropolis. They would have festivals where every person in the city, I think it was like 17,000 people, would leave all of their daily activities and they would go to the theater. And they would all sit in the amphitheater, and they would watch. It could be Oedipus.
Don't look at me when you say Oedipus. It's going to give a bad impression of like,
This guy here.
hypothetically.
He's got 2 thumbs.
No.
We're bringing up all kinds of stuff today.
Let's
Okay.
not talk about that later.
We'll talk about that later when the cameras are off. So Oedipus, famous play where kills his father and finds out he married his mother. Whoops. Or watching Medea kill her children. And so there was an experience that happened with those 17,000 people who had to be there. It was part of being part of the Athenian society. And something happened when people were so locked into what was happening on the stage. Aristotle wrote about it. He called it catharsis. He spelled it with a K, catharsis. He said that when people have real reactions to real emotions happening, there is the releasing of emotions. Just like Gabe said, fear, sadness, shame, anger, all of these things. The things that are inside of us, but in our day-to-day lives, many of us, myself included, I've been told that I don't need to bring those out into the community, into groups of people. These are things that I need to deal with alone, on my own. There was a guy in the 1920s named J.L. Moreno who looked to the history of mental health and psychology, and he found that there were ways that people could reconnect with what was important to them, besides just having to sit and lay on a sofa, stare at the ceiling, and talk to some guy sitting behind you. It turns out that if we can, again, not just talk about what's happening in our lives, but actually show it. And he found in New York, at Carnegie Hall, in the Theater of Spontaneity, which is what he called it. We call it Catharsis Theater. He called it Spontaneity, Theater of Spontaneity in 1921. He had people go up on the stage and show their lives, put their own lives onto the stage, rather than playing parts in something that has nothing to do with them. And he saw the most miraculous things. People could have conversations with their spouses that they weren't able to do otherwise. People could say goodbye to children that had died, that they never had an opportunity to do so. All of a sudden, there was just this explosion, and we've been riding that wave ever since. It's not just staying on the surface of emotions, but really getting into embodied emotions. And again, it's not true, but it's real. And thank goodness, because we all need more real in our lives in order to get unstuck.
Yeah, and as actors, that's essential too, right? So
there's this long tradition of actors who were exposed to the techniques and practices of psychodrama and sociometry, which is another term in the field where don't just tell me, show me, and later on say we're going to be doing some activities and doing some psychodrama. And so when we see performers who are truly embodied and really tapping in, I'm sitting next to an actor and a performer, and this is what
Not always embodied.
not always embodied, and it's hard too, because if we're not warmed up and we don't have trust and have that other thing, which is spontaneity, and spontaneity is a big term in corporate America, and athletes, they talk about flow state. In mental health world, and I think in what we're talking about here, we call it spontaneity, which is being able to respond to the moments as they arise. Not perfectly, but adequate response to an old situation or a new situation, adequacy. And
Also without censoring, without going,
Yeah.
this thing is coming up. Wait, is that okay? Should I say that? Is it healthy? Am I going to embarrass myself?
Yeah.
Am I going to...
we do that all the time, right?
flow
We
stages.
censor ourselves. We're
Constantly.
stuck in our minds
Constantly.
all the time, and this is such
Yeah.
a great way to release that, or
Right.
sort of forgive yourself or to allow yourself to not be stuck in your mind and just be natural and honest. And
I think one of the most healing things in this, I'm in a few 12-step programs as well, and so it's kind of some carryover from that, is to go in a room and be with 25, 30 strangers that you didn't know an hour ago, and be unpacking your story or really vulnerable parts of your story, and look up and see everyone going. People came in different cars, look differently, different jobs, live in different parts of town, and the humanity and the through line of just what it is to be a human right now, and saying the craziest stuff that only you think about, and everyone laughs and goes, oh my God, I thought about that driving over here. I had that thought, I had that fear. That there's something about like the human social animal aspect of it where you're like, you go and I've never seen the people again that we've done some of the stuff with, but you had that collective moment, and it stays with a part of you that goes, oh, I'm a part of, I belong, I'm not alone. And I think that's one of the best parts of what you do.
Human connection. Yeah.
Human connection, yeah. We're not alone, we're not broken. We can make mistakes, but we are not a mistake. Brene Brown and all her great research and her scholarship and her profile in the world now studying shame, and shame is not just in May, Mental Health Awareness Month, but every month. Shame is really the hardest emotion for so many of us. Shame says, as Brene Brown talks about often, shame says, I am a mistake. Guilt is I made a mistake. We all make mistakes, but shame is I am a mistake. And there's too many people that are suffering in silence. And I hope that people listening to this can be reminded that, wow, maybe I'm not the only one who has dealt with this. Maybe there's other ways that I can get tapped into what matters to me and reconnect with myself. And maybe it's not, I just need to find a therapist. There's so many other ways. And I'm a therapist, and it's okay that there's more than just, I need a therapist. No, I need to feel again. I need connection. And in the 12-step programs, I'm a part of a few 12-step programs. And like they say, the opposite of addiction is not sobriety. The opposite of addiction is connection. And connection really is what it's all about.
That's a perfect segue into it being Mental Health Awareness Month. So I would love to hear from both of you. For anybody who's watching out there who's been hesitant to reach out to anybody, or might be dealing with stuff recently or long term, what are some avenues for them to take that they can seek out help or feel connected? Yeah.
So maybe one thing that I can just start by saying is that this month is a good time to talk about another aspect of awareness campaigns, which is giving people permission. Giving people permission to, because it's not just waiting for when you're in a crisis. A lot of us feel like, okay, it's not that bad, and maybe I'll give it another 6 months, I'll give it another 9 months, I'll give it another 12 months. Whether it's my relationship with food, opening and closing the fridge every night, just standing there, just eating in a mindless way, dealing with anxiety, dealing with racing thoughts, dealing with isolation. So we don't need to wait until it's the break glass for emergency kind of moment. That it's okay to reach out, not just if it's an emergency, but if you're not living, if your life isn't as full as you'd like it to be, if there's things in your life that you don't have access to because of what you're dealing with, then reach out. And maybe we can share a little bit about what the reaching out might look like. But I just wanted to say that, and I was just inspired by what you said, which is just permission to reach out, even if it's not a 911 situation. So that was the first thing I want to say, just about permission. Like, it's okay to reach out. It doesn't have to be an emergency.
Yeah, I think that's, I'm just going to copy you, copying me.
Go ahead.
So it's kind of full circle.
Uh-huh.
Giving yourself permission to, if you're frustrated or angry or I don't want to be here, and then giving yourself permission to experience that without letting it overtake you and just completely self-sabotaging and like waving the white flag on life, and being like, how is there, just thinking, being an inquiry of, is there a way for me to reconnect to this moment, this job, this relationship, this issue, in a way that is kinder to myself, in a way that I give myself more space to be human, and ultimately, I mean, I think it has to start there, ultimately in a way where I can contribute the most value, because I think that none of us, we get overwhelmed, and we have, myself included, have temper tantrums and pity parties, and we just kind of like, I don't want to be here, no. And then it's kind of a drag to be around. But no one, actually, people like when they're like the person who everyone's like, oh, I like when they're around, because they're engaged in life, they're immersed, they're present, they're connected. And I think that we can't always all be that way, but I think it starts with like, how am I? What do I need right now? And I think it's really like a poor way of saying it, but you have to be selfish in order to be selfless. Like, I think that 1,000,000% I will die on that.
Let's say that again.
You have to be selfish in order to be selfless.
Wow.
You have to go into a situation and go, how is this going to work for me? Not like, how can I manipulate and get stuff, but if I'm going to add to this situation, what do I need right now? And I think really checking in with yourself, whether it's going to a class or going to a show or going to a job, and even if no one else sees it and you don't get anything out of it, just being like, hey, I'm here, I got you, what do we need? Do we need a snack? Do we need to, on our break, go take a walk? Do we need to read a poem? Like, I just think self-care is the most important thing, and whatever that means to the billions of people on the planet, I just encourage people to let themselves partake in it.
Well, those are both really some great bits of advice for anybody out there. I also really wanted to say that the human connection element that we talked about, I think that is so important. I think whatever it takes to find a group of friends, and feel free to just talk about stuff, because that stuff really, really helps. So now Catharsis Theater, it happens right here at the Blue Door about once a month or so. You can find more information about it at Arts Up LA. You can find out information about it at Keili Grief. And guys, I want to thank you so much for coming in today. Well, we're going to actually do one later, so we're really excited to do a Catharsis Theater here shortly. And thanks so much for the work that you do with mental health, guys. Really, really appreciate it.
Great. Thanks, Brian.
Thank you.
Community calendar May. Here we go. Rex and Friends at the Salute to Recreation Family Festival, May 17th at 1 p.m. in Northridge. Yes, our own Rex and Friends are performing there, and enjoy a full lineup of activities, a children's area, vendors, food, drinks, entertainment, tournaments, carnival rides, and games. Jazz at LACMA every Friday in May. One of LA's best free live music offerings, Jazz at LACMA has featured legit legends over its 35-year run at the museum. Seating for the program is available at the plaza on a first-come, first-served basis, but you can picnic in the grass too. The Achuchas Celebrating Worlds Art and Literacy Festival, Saturday, May 30th. Immerse yourself in a day of creative engagement, community connection, and ancestral knowledge. This dynamic outdoor festival inspires and amplifies and pushes us to move toward a deeper understanding of self, culture, and self-determination through the powerful means of the arts and critical literacy.
What's up, everybody? I am here with Dennis Tran and Keili Fernando, and we're here to talk about advocacy for disabled artists. We're here to talk about Asian American, Native Hawaiian, Pacific Islander Heritage Month, and we're also here to talk about their new film, Crosswalk. Thanks so much for being here today. So I want to first talk about the film. This is a film that was created for the Easter Seals Disability Challenge, is that right?
Yes.
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit about the film and how it came to be. Dennis, go ahead.
So during the film challenge, initially I started the idea of what cool opportunity could kind of like tell story about disabled and neurodivergent folks like on behind the scene, and something is always with a passion of mine. And I decided to kind of pitch the collaboration idea to Keili, and she managed to put the team together, and we managed to pull it off like for the film challenge.
Yeah, for me, a lot of it was that I've been in film for a while and just wrapped up another short film. And Dennis we were introduced to each other a few years ago through another nonprofit organization, Asians in Advertising. And with that, we had a mutual interest in film and storytelling especially. And when he had told me about this Easter Seals Disability Film Challenge, it sounded very interesting and actually kind of something similar that I had done in college, where it was a compressed timeline and you had to write the whole script, produce it, edit it, get the whole thing done. At the time it was 48 hours, and so this one felt a little bit of a luxury with a 5-day allotted timeline. For us it was 4 because I only had 4 days available, but when Dennis had mentioned it to me, I was like, you know, this sounds really cool. And he's told me like he had been wanting to do this for like close to 7 years. And I was like, gosh, if I can make a friend's dream come true, and I have other friends who are also saying they want to be on set and do some sort of creative film thing, I was like, maybe it was just a match made in heaven for this particular timing. So it all worked out.
Amazing. Tell me, what were some challenges that came along with making the film?
I would say the biggest challenge was the time constraint and also like limited budget and resources that we had. We only literally had 4 days. I know working with Keili's schedule as well and everyone else's schedule, so it was like we only had 4 days to make things work. But we first pulled the team together, but we also had like we met one day. Then once the scope, the project scope was announced, it was also like we had like a day to write the script, and then a day to shoot, and then a day to edit. So everyone just adjusted, and we managed to make things work.
So it's just full speed ahead, all hands on deck, just knock it out, huh? That must have been such a sense of accomplishment. Well, I think, is this something that everybody's going to be able to get a chance to check out? Is it going to be like as part of the festival first, or the challenge first, or is it available online already, or is it something we can go see somewhere?
Yeah, the film's already available to watch. You can see it on YouTube on the Easter Seals Disability Film Challenge channel, or you could also see it on Facebook. And yeah, next steps are we'll find out about the challenge, who the winners are. I think by the time this is out, we'll find out.
Okay.
And hopefully we'll get to bring the film to some other festivals and just bring it to different communities and have great conversations, because that's ultimately what I think this challenge is about, is just to be able to be more inclusive and to spread awareness of, you know, we all come from different backgrounds, we all have different abilities, and when we come together, we can make something beautiful.
I love it. That's amazing. So it is also AANHPI. And so I want to talk a little bit about, we're here in beautiful little Tokyo at the Japanese Cultural Center, and I wanted to talk to both of you a little bit about what AANHPI means to you, and just why this month is important.
I guess AHPI Heritage Month is like a time to celebrate culture, a time to connect like pride in our cultural identities. Like growing up, like, you know, I didn't have a lot of like I guess like awareness or things about like celebration in terms of like Asian culture outside of my own family growing up and tradition growing up. So it's often an afterthought, or like if there's a holidays, I would have to take time off school and stuff like that, or there's like all the time growing up in school, kids will all make fun of me for bringing up my own cultural food in the school. So kind of like a day to kind of celebrate and embrace like Asian identities and culture, but also like, you know, to kind of share our story and connect with other people that like we exist, and just like reclaim our narrative, you know.
I love that. I love how you mentioned like embracing an identity as well. For me, I'm half Chinese, half Filipino, but my first name is Hawaiian. So bringing all that together, I have family in different parts of the globe, also on the Hawaiian Islands. So just learning more about their cultures and then how that's all impacted my life, my viewpoints, my way of living. It's very interesting to be able to find those intersections and then be able to have stories like in Crosswalk, where we can just share just like a snippet with broader audiences to let them know like, hey, here's a little bit of a peek into like what my life is, but also people who are similar to me. But I think it also is important because it opens up an opportunity to have that dialogue again, and for it to become a more recognized thing annually. I think that's such a great opportunity because you have kind of this forward momentum because of just the annual nature.
Yeah, and it feels like an opportunity to reinforce culture too, which I think is really important.
Yeah.
So I also want to talk, Dennis, we're going to talk a lot about your advocacy for the disability community, which is enormous, and
awesome.
we can't wait to talk about that. But I do want to talk to you, Keili, a little bit about what your connection is to disability. I know you're obviously a very accomplished artist, musician
Thank you.
yourself, and but I would love to hear kind of what drew you to working on this project and just to
Yeah.
disability in general.
I think first and foremost for me, I just see people as people first. And so, like, when I first met Dennis, I could tell immediately he was very passionate about storytelling. And so the opportunity to collaborate with him in this format that I'm very familiar with, but he's a bit newer to, and to be able to create something together, because I'm not quite as familiar of the lived experience, especially of a person with disabilities. He was able to fully bring that to the forefront. And so for a project like this to be able to just kind of marry those two experiences together, we're able to create something that we're both proud of, and so is our team. In terms of like other connections to disability, my grandparents, they have dementia and Alzheimer's. I helped associate produce another project called Gloria, and that was about a Chinese woman who also had dementia. And that film, we were able to spark a lot of conversations with the director and writer Kim Blank.
Thank you for sharing that. So Dennis, now with you, your advocacy extends through art, through healthcare. And you're visually impaired, is that right?
Yeah, I'm like partially blind.
Partially blind, and you also were late stage diagnosed with autism and ADHD. Is that correct? We were talking about this a little bit earlier. I'd love to hear what getting that diagnosis later on in life, how that impacted you.
I would say like my late autism ADHD diagnosis in 2020 really reevaluated my life, and challenged everything I knew about myself. Because oftentimes when I was diagnosed with glaucoma, being partially blind at the age of 17, it was very a different stage of my life where there's no representation. The only representation I had was my dad growing up, and of course there was a lot of survival mentality of like in traditional Vietnamese American family. I kind of saw how like his own family member treated him, like his sibling treated him, how society treated disability, and the policy behind that. So I always kind of felt like, oh, it's like it's not a good thing to be disabled. And even when I became partially blind with glaucoma, I kind of saw like my peers didn't know how to respond to disability, or there's not a lot of resources, or people just got so overwhelmed they just started avoiding me and stuff like that. So I kind of felt like I definitely felt very misunderstood by like myself situation like that. And of course for me, it's like I consume a lot of media growing up, like YouTube, Asian YouTuber growing up, and also kind of seeing MasterChef Christine Ha, like who's kind of won MasterChef, and kind of seeing a different perspective, like what disability life is and how you can live a meaningful life and stuff like that. And that's when after I kind of got into like my diagnosis in 2020, that's when I kind of like, you know, if I have to be autistic in any way, then I want to just live with it and and find a way to live meaningfully with it.
Well, I think this is a really good way to kind of wrap this up. That like a lot of the things that you have talked about in there are all about accessibility and inclusivity and opportunity, and kind of how those three are so essential to connect with each other. And so this is why it's so important for all of us to continue this conversation and to continue advocacy and creating opportunities. So thank you both for spending this day here with us in beautiful little Tokyo, and thanks to all of you for hanging out with us as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, that's it for the May episode of What's Up LA.
I need to do the next field interview.
Yes.
Please and thank you, because that was beautiful. I wish I could have been there. It was so pretty. Good job.
Well,
Good job, team, this month. Good job. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much. Thank you all for being a part of our community.
Thank you for watching. Thank you for supporting us. And we'll see you very soon at the Blue Door Theater. Until next month, I'm Nina Renzel.
I'm Brian Caldwell.
And that's What's Up.